Years ago, when I was in the seminary in Chicago, I went down to visit my mom's house on the weekend, and on the way home, I stopped by the grocery store to pick up a few things. And when I was in there, someone who recognized me from high school approached me, and I did not recognize who they were. And they said to me, "I saw your story online, and I was just wondering, are you still doing the priest thing or whatever?" And like you, I actually laughed out loud. Then he said, well, I just mean, can you get out of it if you need to? And I was tempted to be a smart aleck and say, well, you know, the telemarketing thing didn't come through, so do the priest thing. Can you imagine if I were to come up to a married couple and say to them, are you still doing the marriage thing or whatever? That whatever. Insult to injury, right? He could have at least not added that part. My brothers and sisters, I tell this story because as I reflect upon this person's well-meaning questions, I realize that his questions are indicative of a mentality that exists within our culture. And that is a mentality that in the face of any kind of commitment or even blessing has as its first question, what's in it for me? And if things get tough, how can I get out of it? We see in essence these same questions as well as their opposites in today's gospel. We hear, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of King Herod, behold, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star at its rising and have come to do him homage. And when King Herod heard this, he was greatly troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Why would King Herod be greatly troubled, and all Jerusalem with him, at the good news of the birth of Jesus? It seems to me they were disturbed because they embodied the mentality of the culture. They were the elites, the politicians, the ones in power, the ones in control. And apparently they felt threatened about a new king coming into the world. They were the media. They were the ones who set the social narrative. They were the ones who lived exclusively for themselves and for their own personal agenda. And so it's no wonder that the first questions that Herod asks are, what's in it for me? And how can I get out of this situation that threatens my agenda? And immediately he began to scheme about how he was going to eliminate the child Jesus. On the other hand, let us reflect on the other three kings, the Magi. How did they respond to the birth of Jesus? Their response is, how can I follow? How can I be with him? How can I give him my absolute best? Our gold, our frankincense, our myrrh. These, my brothers and sisters, these earthly treasures are mere symbols that represent the giving of the Magi's entire hearts. This is the greatest treasure. In the gospel, it says, they opened their treasures. What they were really doing was opening their hearts. And so today's gospel invites us to the one and most important thing that God wants from us, and that is our hearts. It seems to me that it is we who make religion more complicated than what it needs to be, because ultimately the only thing that the Lord wants from us is our hearts. As Jesus once said, where your heart is, there also will your treasure be. And this is a struggle in our church today. Have you ever heard someone say, I don't go to church because I don't get anything out of it? And so let us ask ourselves, are we here to get something? Or are we here to give something? Namely, our hearts, our love, our worship, our best time, and our service to others. As St. Paul says today in his letter to the Ephesians, let us take stewardship of God's grace. For only when we give our best to God can God give what is best for us, our families, our friends, and our ministries. On the other hand, there is the lie of the world that Herod fell into, which says, grab all you can while you can, which actually only leads to unhappiness, misery, and failure. And so may today's Eucharist, my brothers and sisters, help us to respond to God who gives us his very best in the birth of Jesus by giving him our greatest treasure, our entire heart.